What's checking, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Orange Bloods Texas Football Channel. It's been a few days. I'm Geoff Ketchum. That's Anwar Richardson. This edition of the Monday Overreaction Show brought to you by the fine folks at rogueshop.com. Rogue Apothecary. Go to the website, rogueshop.com. They've been a sponsor of Orange Bloods and the YouTube channel for a hot minute now, but they are slowly but surely finding like a soft spot in everybody's hearts on Orange Bloods Anwar, whether it's the gummies, the cartridges, the salve. There are so many different products that can help you just feel better, be better, exist in this earth better. Check them out, rogueshop.com. Use your Orange Blood sponsorship code, which I think is just Orange Bloods. It's right there above my head or below my head, depending on how it's framed on the show. But we got a lot of things to talk about today, Anwar. Do us a solid before we jump into spring football, Agiye Hall, Sean Mathis, so many topics coming out of the weekend. Do us a solid. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, get notifications, comment in the comment section when one of us, probably me, says something that makes you go completely on tilt. That's how this works. So Anwar, it was a weekend. By the way, happy belated Easter to everybody.
Happy Easter. I learned something this weekend about Easter, by the way, Ketch.
What'd you learn?
Apparently, what's supposed to happen is you dye these eggs, and then they're supposed to be left out for this Easter bunny. And then there's supposed to be an exchange that happens that either the Easter bunny takes the dyed eggs, and then you get the other eggs that are filled with stuff in exchange. My kids were telling me about this. I was like, really? I just thought you just got stuff. I didn't know this.
I am not sure that the Easter Bunny works on a barter system.
It was some sort of exchange that they were telling me about.
Yeah, I don't know that that's how it works everywhere because my kids did get the Easter Bunny hookup this year, and it didn't come. You know, we didn't leave cookies like we do. Santa has to be fed.
Yeah. Well, you're supposed to leave carrots for the Easter bunny, though, right?
Oh, I don't know. I think my Easter bunny has diabetes. Yeah, he's eating candy for sure. Let's get into the topics of the day. There's so many places to start. You had a Texas scrimmage that I guess was officially the second scrimmage of the year on Saturday, and there were a number of things to come out of that, the least of which wasn't good quarterback play by both quarterbacks. I had a guy that I talked to on Saturday, Anwar, that told me that Quinn Ewers was so good on Saturday that it needed a really strong response from Hudson Card in order for him to not immediately think Quinn Ewers is going to be the starting quarterback. And he said, to Hudson Card's credit, he really performed well enough on Saturday as well that it looked like a battle, but that Quinn Ewers continuing to make positive strides. You've got transfer portal stuff, which is probably the thing that most people are gassed up the most about, because you've got potentially Sean Mathis, who it feels like we've done 35 videos on, coming in potentially to aid the defensive end edge position, which is so needed. But then you've got Agiye Hall coming in from Alabama this weekend, potentially boosting a wide receiving unit. Feels like transfers are the thing that are on the tips of the tongues of most people. I'll let you choose where we begin. Do we want to start on the field with things that happened in the scrimmage? We want to talk Quinn Ewers and Hudson Card and quarterbacks, or do we save that for later and jump into transfer talk?
Well, you know what? We've heard a little bit of transfer talk before, so why don't we jump into the scrimmage from Saturday?
Well, I mean, it was a day where, you know, scrimmages are so fun because if you have success in one area, it means that another area of your team didn't do well or didn't do as well as its counterpart on the other side. Again, the quarterbacks did well. I think for me, there are a lot of little things, right? Like the offensive line didn't exactly establish the running game. Had a hard time running on the first team defense. That first team defense, when matched up against the second team offense, for the most part, made that as it's been all year, like it's hard for the second team offense to function properly going against better players, but it sounds like the first team offense had a really good day. And again, I mean, for all the things that we can talk about, nothing's more important than the fact that both Quinn Ewers and Hudson Card are both taking steps forward. I mean, that's a position that kind of matters. And it's a hell of a lot better than saying there were a whole lot of interceptions and you're going to have to wait for the progress to show up in August. That progress is already showing up, and it's not just a one-man game.
Yeah, Ketch, I think that was one of the things Sarkisian talked about earlier, about a week or so ago, is that there was a couple of turnovers that he didn't, like, and wanted them to cut back on. So being able to then come back out this Saturday and perform well, speaks, volumes, to, the progress that has been made. I think it's still, at the end of the day, it probably speaks a little bit more about Quinn than as much as Hudson, because I think for me, no matter what, I think as we project what will likely happen in the fall, I think most of us, project that Quinn is probably ends up being the guy. So for me, it's about what his progress looks like, as not as much as Hudson's is. I mean, Hudson is good, and you want to have two quality guys. Injuries happen, you never know. So that it's not to say it's not important, but for me, the headline is, if you're telling me that, being on campus since January and Quinn Ewers is going toe to toe with Hudson Card, who's been on campus for 3 years, I think that says a lot. I think it speaks volumes for where Quinn is at, his development and his upside, because Ketch, if this is just the start, then what becomes the ceiling? Because that's what we know Hudson Card is really good in practice. We don't really ever question that. But if we're saying, like, this is where Quinn is starting, this is where he's at in April, what does that mean where he's going to be back in August? So I think if you're a Texas fan and the progress of Quinn Ewers matters to you, clearly it does. I think that's probably the most positive thing you can take out of Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, either one of us live in a world where we really think there's a quarterback battle taking place. With all due respect to Hudson Card, who's going into his third season but hasn't yet been on campus for 3 years. Just a little clarification in the event there's some Hudson People fan club out there, my fellow fan club members, who are like, wow, that's not coming. Right. This will be his third season, but he hasn't quite been on campus for 3 years. But it doesn't really matter. This is about Quinn Ewers. We all expect that he's going to be the guy. And look, to also be fair to Hudson Card, there was a pick six in Saturday's scrimmage, and it was Quinn Ewers, throwing a pick six that Deshaun Jameson took the other direction. It was washed away, though, by a number of touchdown throws that Ewers made during the scrimmage. And, there's nothing that could be happening with this program right now that's more important than its future starting quarterback progressing and making forward strides during the spring, which is because I've been a subscriber to don't overreact on a Monday overreaction show. Don't overreact to anything that you see in the spring, because this is a team that will end up having 30 plus practices before it takes on Louisiana Monroe in the first game of the season. And they're a little more than a third of the way through that. So you've got an off season, you've got 15 workouts in August. You even have a few more practices the week of the game, the first game, where this team will continue to take steps to be the team that it's going to be when the season starts. But the quarterbacks, they're a work in progress, specifically Quinn Ewers, but that he's this far along and has people excited. And I don't think it's faux excitement. I don't think it's people with Quinn Ewers tinted sunglasses on that only want to see what they want to see. By all accounts, Quinn Ewers is playing pretty well and making progress. And again, it showed up on Saturday. I think one of the more interesting things is that it seems like he's building a really good rapport with Xavier Worthy. They hooked up a couple of times for touchdowns on Saturday, including one play where he did what Texas quarterback should probably do with Quinn Ewers, throwing the ball accurately, and then everybody else get the hell out of the way. Don't just let Xavier be Xavier, which is what he did, and running across the middle of the field, making a couple of guys miss, getting into the end zone. My guess is we'll see that play on social media at some point today or tomorrow as the Longhorns start putting out their sizzle reels, a couple of days after the fact. I think if I had an overreaction, here's a reaction, maybe an overreaction. It feels like the thing that was happening a year ago with the quarterback battle was Card had the reputation of being a guy that would push the ball down the field a little bit and was getting the ball more to the receivers, while Casey Thompson was, I don't want to call him the check down king. He wasn't exactly Shane Boucheling it around the field and keeping everything underneath. But when you look back at the scrimmage, it seemed like Hudson Card had a lot of success with the tight ends, and it felt like Quinn Ewers had more success with the wide receivers. Now, that isn't necessarily something that's automatically happening, but it, I think, does point a finger into the skill set of Ewers and what his arm talent brings to the table. He might make mistakes, but he's probably making mistakes on the side of being aggressive. Although that's not what happened on Saturday, which it seems like it was an RPO that he just didn't quite read correctly. Or maybe you got to give credit to Deshaun Jameson and just say he made a hell of a play. But I think that it wasn't lost on me that Xavier Worthy found the end zone twice on Saturday, and they both came on passes from Quinn Ewers.
Yeah, and by the way, there's a full practice report from Saturday's scrimmage on orangebloods.com. So Ketch, just the quick plug, if you are not.
It's got like 20 pieces of nuggets and information compiled through a number of different sourcing.
I mean, just if you aren't a member, this is all the information you would have received about Saturday's scrimmage. I mean,
a lot of verbiage.
Yes. So it's something you know, as you enjoy this channel, just know that there's way more information that's out there. Teasers, just think about joining. I'm just going to throw it in there. You know, Xavier Worthy, you know, one of the things that I think you and I would both agree last year is that, golly, if they would have hit, it's basically more specifically Casey would have hit Xavier Worthy every time he was open, or at least more percentage of his open, like things could have looked so much differently. Because how many times, Ketch, last year did we see Xavier Worthy get amazing separation? I mean, there not be someone within 10 or more yards of him and the ball just sail over his head. I mean, so having a guy like that, we know he's talented. And, you know, yes, he had, 1,000 yards, probably could have had more if he had some better, more accurate passes. And Quinn Ewers is a guy that can develop that chemistry and get him the ball and strike, which we know he does, because we know he has that arm. But the other thing that Sarkisian talked about is, but he doesn't try to showcase it or show it off. And so I think that's really key, is knowing that he does have it. But, you even talked about this, Ketch, I think one of our things last week, but he's not that guy that he understands touch. He understands how, important that is, and knows how to hit guys in different areas. And if you're telling me he's developing a rapport with Xavier, who is going to be one of the best receivers or better receivers in the country, if he could get that guy the ball consistently, it's a game changer for Texas, I would say.
This might be my biggest Monday overreaction. And this might be worth its own because I don't want to dwell on this for too long.
Okay.
But I think Xavier Worthy right now, after one season, is the third best wide receiver in the history of University of Texas football. Like, that's where I would put him. I think, as someone who considers himself to be a bit of a historian on the subject, having covered the program for nearly 3 decades now, there's Roy Williams and Jordan Shipley. And we can argue about who is number one from that group. I personally would rank Jordan Shipley number one because of the conference championship, the national championship game appearances, and Roy didn't beat OU and never quite had that. But Roy was a first-round draft pick who had a long NFL career, and Jordan Shipley really didn't have that. There's a big drop-off after that. And for me, when I look at Xavier Worthy, I look at him as the third best wide receiver I've covered in this program. And then the question is, before he departs after a couple of more seasons, will he be first, second, or third? Like, he's in the top 3. It's just a matter for me how high up the list he ends up climbing. And part of that now comes accomplishments. It comes stacking numbers on top of each other. But I say all of this to point towards a weapon that these quarterbacks have to work with that we wouldn't have known existed a year ago. We didn't know that Xavier Worthy was going to quite be this. And it is the safety blanket, the whoopee, if you will, of whoever's playing quarterback at any point this season. They've got that dude to throw the football to. And, you know, along with the quarterbacks playing well, I think the rave reviews of the reminder of just how good of a football player Xavier Worthy is. We might just be scratching the surface on that. It's a hell of a thing for the team to be able to build on. It shouldn't be taken for granted that on 3rd and 5, every time this season, the Longhorns are in that situation, they'll be able to lean on a guy that's one of the best players the school has ever seen at that position. It is probably the thing that should excite Texas fans most about going into this year. There are a couple of special players on this in high profile positions that have a chance to define what this season is remembered for. If it was up to Xavier Worthy last year, Texas would have beaten Oklahoma. And, you know, and it wasn't because of his heroics that they didn't, you know, to be able to count on that. And the Saturday scrimmage was just another reminder of that. Oh, yeah, they have that dude. And I don't know that it's a huge indictment on the Texas secondary that they weren't quite able to corral Xavier Worthy this weekend. He's going to do that to most teams that he plays this season, assuming he's not double and, you know, assuming coverages aren't dictated so specific to him that he can't get the ball at all. I mean, we saw a couple of times last year where that did happen, where teams really made Worthy a subject of what they were doing primarily on defense. And that's where you need other guys to pick up the slack. A year ago, it didn't happen. I think one of the things that Texas is counting on this year is that the health of Jordan Whittington, the addition of Isaiah Nayer, the continued emergence of Marcus Washington and Corey Kane for that matter, or Casey Kane, and then the injection potentially of a big play weapon in Ajay Hall changes potentially the way this offense is able to run in the passing game. And I think it'll be a conversation that we have between now and the rest of this offseason is just how much better the passing game is when it's not a one-man show, which when Whittington went out, it really became Xavier Worthy, no real passing game to the tight ends. And it put a lot of responsibility on Marcus Washington, probably too much to ask for that guy. This year, it feels like there's an army of help, and it has changed, I think, the way we'll see this Texas offense.
Well, don't forget the emergence of Jatavian Sanders in that thing also. That was also one of the highlights of Saturday, and one of the things that you had in their report. So, yeah, you know, you start looking at the weapons that they have, and we haven't even, you know, we're talking receiving weapons. We haven't even talked about the Bijans or Roshans or Keelan Robinson, who could go out there as well. You look at the weapons, Ketch, and you say to yourself, how do you just focus in on one guy? Because if you do decide, okay, it's going to be Xavier Worthy, and we're just not going to let that guy beat us, so everyone else has to beat us, there's a good chance you're going to get beat, Ketch. I mean, there's with those guys who are healthy. I mean, that if you're saying Jordan Whittington single coverage, Isaiah Nayer is going to have single coverage. You're going to have a guy like Jatavian Sanders who's going to be able to operate underneath and, you know, within close quarters, and then having the running backs as well. And you don't forget Bijan, you know, went out. Bijan caught passes as well within the system. I think he caught one, a wheel route touchdown. Forget which game that was last year, but
they should have a wheel route in every game. Like that should be twice a game. You know, you just throw that out there to make sure teams are honest and they know, oh, they can do that. They're going to do that.
Yeah, and so when you start looking at offensive weapons, offensive firepower, you know, it becomes one of those like there's only one ball kind of thing, because there are so many weapons. And then to your point, if someone gets banged up, if someone has to come out for a play, you're not looking at it and saying, boy, this team is 100% screwed. We feel like Xavier Worthy's here, and then, you know, and then he's the top receiver. He's one of the top receivers in the country. So, I mean, like, that's no disrespect to anyone else, but you don't look at it and say, it's such a a drop off if something else happens. If Jordan Whittington gets banged up, there's still some other people that could take some pressure off of Xavier. I think that'll be the benefit, I think, Ketch, for the Texas offense. So many weapons, so many guys to choose from. And to your point, you say Casey Kane, Marcus Washington has had a good camp as well. There's a lot of different.
I think Marcus Washington is very quietly. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
I think the Marcus Washington camp, I think he caught 4 or 5 passes in the scrimmage on Saturday. Mm-hmm. One was a deep ball, most of it kind of underneath, intermediate passing game type stuff. But he's holding off Isaiah Nayor at that other outside receiver spot more so than I would have guessed, to the point where if you ask me, who do I think starts the opener? I don't know. There's a part of me that they love Marcus Washington. They think he's everything that's right with the program in terms of that guy puts in a day's work every day and he's making plays. And I think Isaiah Nayor has the most upside, but it wouldn't shock me if in the opener, Washington is the starter and that Nayor comes off the bench. And I don't know that I would have thought that the day that Isaiah Nayor committed to Texas and arrived with this huge, resume of success while at Wyoming. It's a huge credit to Marcus Washington, who's a senior and ain't got time to play with losing his job. Credit to Marcus Washington for making what on paper might seem like an easy, well, that guy's going to be a starter. And I'm not so sure. I think Marcus Washington is going to be a player that has a big role in this offense going into 2022. And I think he's a guy oftentimes that's, even by myself, has been dismissed easily. And I think he may prove this season that that's an attitude that never should have been directed towards him.
Yeah, hopefully I don't have to eat my words, but let me say this. I want to give Marcus some credit for staying the course. I think, I don't think Ketch, you and I would have blinked or judged him at all if a guy from, St. Louis decided like, this thing ain't working out here in Texas. I'm going to go somewhere closer to home, somewhere where I can get, bet more playing time, all those kind of things. Like I say that and I'll jinx it, right? He'll go to the portal right after the spring. They're like, you idiot, you jinxed it on us. But
I don't think that's going to happen this time.
Yeah, as of today, I'll just give him credit, for staying the course and trusted it, but between, golly, how many receivers coaches has Marcus Washington had since he's been here, second head coach. So just, it's, give some props to, that young man for what he's been able to do. And you're right, fighting off a guy who came in with a whole lot of hype, a whole lot of expectations, and a whole lot of belief that he would be that other guy opposite Xavier Worthy. And Marcus is saying, not today, not right now, and not without a fight. He's making sure he's going to fight. If it's when Isaiah Nayor gets on the field, he would have definitely have earned it. And he was nothing's given to him. And Marcus is fighting. And Ketch, I've said this before, when I see Marcus in practice, he looks good, man. That guy's quick. He's got the ability to get open. He makes good catches. I like his hands. And he's a great added weapon. I mean, there's obviously the hierarchy here in this Texas offense. And so it's going to be hard for him to make a mark. But if you're telling me, I'll be honest with you, if there's a 12-game season and Marcus Washington ends up being one of the starters, I think Ketch, there's at least 2, maybe 3 100-yard games in him this season. I think a lot of that's going to be off of big plays, but I wouldn't be shocked at all because I think he's just got that much talent, within him.
I think it'd be a disappointment if Isaiah Nayor doesn't take that job over at some point, because I've looked at Isaiah Nayor and I think that's a guy that can play on Sundays from a talent standpoint. When you watch what he did at Wyoming, in my mind, this is a guy that can come in, have a fairly big season. And if he turned pro after this year, it wouldn't be a huge shock. I think that's kind of the line of expectations that I think that's what Isaiah Nayor thinks about himself. Now, we all know it doesn't always work out that way. I mean, Ovie Ogofu has said in one of our videos that when he first came to Texas last year, his plan was to have a big enough first season at Texas that he'd be getting ready for the NFL draft this offseason. Doesn't always go that way, but it would. The question I keep asking myself is Marcus Washington an NFL football player? And I'm not saying no, but I'm not saying yes either. I'm kind of straddling the bar of I don't know. So in order for Marcus Washington, I think, to hold Isaiah Neyor off, if he's still the starter in November, for me, that means that Marcus Washington will at some point over the course of the early part of the season proven he's going to play on Sundays. Doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be an early draft. Doesn't even mean necessarily he'll be a draft pick at all. But it just means that that guy's got enough ability that he will one day play on Sundays and can hold off a guy that can be a Sunday player. I have to be honest. One of the things from Saturday that I've noticed was that Neyor had kind of a quiet day, certainly in contrast to Washington. And it was just a one-day snapshot, never overreact to just one day. But Neyor may be getting reps with the first team offense, which he is. But I think Washington has made more plays this spring. And if there was a game tomorrow, he's probably the guy that gets the start. It does make me think, when we think about Agiye Hall, where exactly he fits into the 2022 Texas passing game, because I don't automatically think of him as a slot guy. So I don't think of him as a backup to Jordan Whittington. In fact, I have to believe that the coaches are dying to get Brennan Thompson in the 2 deep as a slot receiver, and a guy that occasionally, when Whittington goes out, they could put all of that speed on the offense and get him on the field. So then it's like, okay, well, where's the battle taking place? That other outside spot is Marcus Washington and Isaiah Neyor. Neyor is finding it to be a tall hill to climb to take over that spot. Hall shows up with 4 career receptions, but he's a big kid with a lot of speed. And if you can allow yourself to live in a world, I said this the last time we did a video on Hall, but Washington is a senior. So I think it's expected that this will be his last season. Although I guess he's got a COVID year, he could always cash in if he wanted to, but I don't get the sense that that's yet on the table. If Jordan Whittington and if Isaiah Neyor has the type of season that he wants, he'd like to go to the NFL. In a year from now, 3 of the top 4 passing game options could be headed off to the league. And you're left with Xavier Worthy. And potentially at that point, Agiye Hall becomes a massive piece of the offense because of what's departed. I wonder what it means for Hall to come in this season. And I wonder how much setting proper levels of expectations for Hall, who I've come around on, by the way. I'm actually writing my 10 thoughts from the weekend, which will be a little bit late because of Easter and the fact that yesterday was my 12-year wedding anniversary.
Happy anniversary, by the way.
We made it 12 years. I think that's officially like the mark where if you get that far, you just stay married forever.
Yeah, I mean, like, first of all, in today's society, like 12, like you got to do that. That's like dog years,
It's
right?
like dog years. It's like we've been married for almost a century.
Yeah, I mean, like people don't go that long nowadays, so I can attest to that. So that's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Real quick. How did you guys celebrate? Quick sidebar.
We were going to go have a very nice steak dinner and go see a movie last night. Kind of boring, but kind of what you do on your 12-year wedding anniversary.
Yeah.
Our kids were going to stay with their cousins.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out their cousins didn't have today off from school and their mom didn't know it. So at about 5 o'clock, as we were getting ready to leave the kids with their cousins and their aunt and uncle so that we could go have a wedding anniversary night, that didn't happen. We found out that surprise.
Wow. You guys were already dressed?
We were in our Easter attire. So
okay, yeah, so you're ready to go.
We were ready. Yes, we would have been on our way to dinner and a movie. And instead, it was like a normal night, except we added yet another 7-8-year-old to the mix because we had to take the extra cousin that was also going to be staying at the cousin's house. We had to bring her home because the other cousins had school today and are in school right now as we record this, while our kids are just running around loose. Come on, Montgomery County School District, let your kids off for 4 days. Sorry, ran over. Blaming the Montgomery County School District for my anniversary night turning into me hanging out in bed and watching Winning Time on HBO.
Wow. Wait, so you didn't audible and like just bring a steak to the house or something like that?
We had food.
Well, I mean, but okay, so when does the steak dinner happen?
It'll happen this week.
I'm just asking.
The funny thing is my mom was there and my mom was like, I am so sorry that this has happened to you guys. And I was like, yeah, well, Mom, you don't feel so sorry that you're volunteering to watch the kids tonight so we can keep our plans.
Mom sent you a text as she put the phone down and put it on do not disturb.
Yeah, I am so sorry. I feel for you guys. And I was like, there's a limit to your feeling, though. You're just not saying that out loud, because if you really felt bad for us.
Well, there's a difference between sympathy and empathy. Sympathy is seeing someone that's in the ditch and say, man, I feel bad for that person who's in the ditch. Empathy is going down and grabbing them out of the ditch. Your mom had sympathy.
Oh, yeah.
But
She's
she didn't
a great
empathize.
sympathizer.
Yeah, she didn't empathize.
Sympathize the hell out of that situation, Anwar.
She didn't empathize with you at all.
You could not look up the word empathy in the dictionary and see a picture of my mom going. Not there.